I, 27F, just got married to my husband Brad, 33M, a week ago. Unfortunately, instead of enjoying this newlywed glow, we're unexpectedly dealing with a lot of flack, mostly from my husband's side of the family after we publicly kicked his ex-wife out of our wedding when she tried to ruin our day. For context, Brad was married to Jessie for 2 years. They had been high school sweethearts for a long time when Jessie suddenly got pregnant at the mere age of 18, even though Brad and she had always been careful. When Jessie told him about it, Brad made it very clear to her that he didn't want to be a father so soon as they were just starting college, but ultimately would support her no matter what decision she made. Jessie's parents also asked her to not become a mother at such a young age, but Jessie insisted that she wanted to keep the child. Brad and his family respected her decision, and she eventually gave birth to their son Thomas. Jessie had to drop out of college so she could take care of their son since her parents did not want to help her out much. Brad and his family sent her monthly child support payment as agreed upon and helped her out in any way that she could. Brad would meet and spend time with Thomas when he would come back from college and eventually fell in love with him. Even though initially he didn't want to become a father, he was glad to have Thomas and started to become more and more involved in his child's life. Jessie had always been close with his parents, so she and Thomas would spend a lot of time at his place with his parents. When Brad graduated and secured a good job, his parents had a serious discussion with him where they told him that they wanted him to step up and marry Jessie so they could all become a family and take care of Thomas together. After a lot of discussions, Brad agreed and eventually, they got married. Brad has told me since that he was never happy in their marriage since he was too young and felt pushed by his parents to make this decision. He wanted Thomas to be happy and thought marrying Jessie would be the right decision for him. Unfortunately, their relationship quickly turned toxic. Now Brad is a handsome guy and he would sometimes get attention from his peers, which Jessie absolutely hated. He never cheated on her nor entertained anyone else, but Jessie quickly started to become abusive and resentful towards him due to her own insecurities. If he came home even 10 minutes late, she would start screaming at him that he was cheating on her and that he was sleeping with his coworkers. Brad would try his best to calm her down, but she would threaten him, saying things like she would run away with Thomas or Thomas would never love a cheating father like him. Their arguments became a daily argument, with Jessie even going as far as trying to contact his female coworkers through social media so she could stalk them. She would then subtly bring up their names in their conversations and would ask Brad if he found her attractive. Even if Brad would tell her no because he genuinely didn't find them attractive, she would jump up screaming and shouting that he was a big liar and that he must be sleeping with them. She would have a problem with him going to hang out with his friends on the weekend when they just played video games all day and would insist that he take Thomas along with him. Brad would cave in, not because he wanted to listen to her demands but because he didn't mind his son spending time with him and his friends. Brad's friends are super nice and they all love Thomas, so no one really minded when Brad would show up with his son during their video gaming sessions. Overall, Brad did try his best to make sure that Jessie would eventually get over her insecurities and wild assumptions, but unfortunately, she never did. One time Brad had to go on a business trip to meet and secure a very important client. Initially, he was going to go alone, but at the last moment his boss, Kaylee, decided to join as well since this was a very important client and they wanted to give a good first impression. When Brad told this to Jessie, she freaked out as expected and started saying how she always knew he was screwing around at the office and accused him of making up excuses to just go on a trip with his boss where they could do anything that they wanted. Brad pleaded with her to understand and even showed her their client profile, trying to make her understand how important and wealthy this client was and how his boss was just going to help him secure this client. Jessie did not care and continued to fight. She kept insisting that he should drop out and that his boss could go alone without him, but at this point, Brad had enough. He firmly told her that it was just a one-night trip and that he was not going to drop out since this would help with his promotions which were coming up. They kept fighting, but Brad did leave for the business trip, promising her that he would be back very soon. As luck would have it, their business trip got extended by one more day as the client needed some more reassurances, so Brad talked with Jessie regarding the same. He thought everything would be okay, but when he returned back home, he found the house empty. Panicking, he called Jessie, but her sister, Nina, picked up the call and informed Brad that Jessie and Thomas would be staying with her for a couple of days as Jessie couldn't bear to look at him after what he had done. He was confused and asked Nina what she meant by that, as he had just gone on a business trip, but Nina started accusing him of cheating on Jessie and how despicable he was to do such a thing. Brad tries to explain, but she cuts him off, so he decides to drive there and confront Jessie in person. Jessie and Brad have a huge fight when he shows up at Nina's place demanding to see Thomas. Brad tries to talk some sense with her and even shows Nina all the evidence of how he met with his client and secured such a great deal which would help his career going forward. He then asks Jessie if she has any proof of what she is accusing him of, and Jessie starts insinuating how he stayed for one more night, so it must mean that he was up to something with his boss, otherwise why would he delay coming back to his family? At this point, Brad had done enough explaining, but Jessie stuck to her assumptions that he had cheated on her, so after he met Thomas, he announced to Jessica that this was clearly not working out, so there was no point in staying together any longer. He told her that he wanted a divorce, but for the sake of their son, he was going to be cordial with her for the rest of their lives. Hearing this, Jessie did not expect this and started screaming at him that he was abandoning his family and many other abusive words that Brad has told me about. She even started to threaten him that she was going to ruin his life, but Brad knew that he didn't want to be with her anymore as it was starting to affect his mental health, so he stuck by his guns and left Nin's place. Eventually, he informed his parents, who were shocked, but seeing how distraught Brad was and how much he was unhappy those 2 years, they eventually understood. Jessie, on the other hand, in her anger and frustration, decided to reach out to Brad's boss, Kaylee, through social media and send her a very improper, long message accusing her of sleeping with Brad and many other things. I don't know the exact fallout, but Brad has told me that Kaylee had a meeting with him and showed him the message, to which he was utterly embarrassed and begged her for forgiveness on behalf of Jessie. Fortunately, Kaylee understood, and Brad told her about how toxic his marriage had become and how Jessie had left their place when he came back from their business trip. After listening to his entire story, Kaylee was really understanding and asked Brad to take as much time as he needed to take care of this personal matter. This was the last straw that completely broke their relationship, and Brad immediately contacted a divorce lawyer so they could go their separate ways. I have heard from Brad that this divorce process was incredibly difficult for him, as Jessie would accuse him of the most preposterous thing just to delay their divorce. She and her lawyer were also fighting for sole custody of Thomas, but, thankfully, the judge saw through Jessie and gave them joint custody, recognizing Brad's genuine commitment to being a responsible and involved parent. Brad had been a single parent for a very long time when I came into the picture. I joined this company a year and a half ago. We became friends eventually and would hang out with everyone else as a group. A few months later, Brad asked me out, which was a pleasant surprise since I had always had a tiny crush on him. I have never been the one who dates their coworkers, as I think it is a bit tacky and I like to keep my private life separate from my workplace, but Brad proved me wrong. Everything was effortless with him, and I loved how our relationship slowly transitioned from coworkers to friends to lovers. He is the kindest and most honest human being I have ever known. During dating, Brad was very upfront with me about his relationship with his ex-wife. He told me everything so that I would know everything before becoming more serious with him. It really pained me to see how hurt Brad was from his toxic relationship with Jessie. We changed each other for the better and have been together ever since then. Everything was fine until his ex-wife became aware of me about 6 months into our relationship. Now I knew how Jessie was based on what Brad had told me, but nothing would have prepared me for the sheer hate she had for me since we first met at a family event. I had met Brad's parents separately before, and they were the ones who had invited me for their Thanksgiving dinner. Jessie was invited as well, since Brad's parents had always involved her during family events. When Jessie showed up, she completely ignored my presence even though I was standing right next to Brad. She hugged him and started touching his hair, remarking about how good he looked with the new hairstyle. Brad, clearly uncomfortable, loosened her grip and hugged me closer, telling her that I was his girlfriend. I smiled at her politely, and Jessie gave me an icy stare before excusing herself. The tension lingered throughout the dinner, with Jessie making passive-aggressive comments towards me since we were seated together. She would comment about how Brad liked blonde girls better and how she never thought he would end up with someone like me. Each word she spoke seemed carefully chosen to dig under my skin, and it only intensified as the evening wore on. I tried my best to brush off her hostility, focusing on engaging with Brad's parents and enjoying the Thanksgiving gathering. Brad, sensing my discomfort, would subtly reassure me, offering a protective embrace whenever he could. From my very first interaction with Jessie, I could see exactly why Brad had divorced her, because she was unbearable and hateful for no reason. I wish I could write that this was just an isolated incident, but Jessie continued to be awful towards me. One time I caught her spreading malicious rumors about me with Brad's cousins and relatives, telling them how I was the reason for their divorce and how I had taken Brad away from his child. Brad and I confronted her about it, and I told her how I had not even joined the company when they were going through a divorce, so it was ridiculous of her to make up such a thing. Jessie smirked at me and started accusing me of being a gold digger and that I tricked him into a relationship with me. Brad asked her to stop and to be more respectful towards me, but unfortunately, she never listened. She once even went as far as to send me abusive messages from a fake page on Instagram. I knew it was her since the abusive messages were very specific and only she would know. It was like a never-ending soap opera that we never signed up for. What really got to me was how she was using the kid in this situation. I had met Thomas occasionally prior to me and Brad dating, so when he and I got together, I was already familiar with Thomas. Brad never asked me to step up as a parent, nor did I want to take up a parent role in his child's life. I just wanted to be a good role model and friend to Thomas in times of need. Once when he had his birthday, I brought him new skates which he had been wanting for a long time. Thomas was overjoyed and I was happy to see him so happy. The next weekend when I met him, I saw him wearing his old skates, so I asked him if the new skates I had gifted didn't fit him. Thomas then told me how his mother had told him that he couldn't keep it and she had thrown them away even though he had pleaded with her. I was so hurt that I felt like crying there and then. My fiancé was horrified and confronted Jessie about it, but she claimed I had no right to be in contact with Thomas or give him gifts, and said that she was disgusted that he even allowed me around their kid, and said it made her question his judgment as a parent. It shocked me how cruel her words were. When I moved into Brad's place, she at first didn't allow Thomas to come and visit Brad, insisting that she couldn't trust their son with me around. Eventually, Brad's parents had to talk to her for her to allow Brad to see his own son. She would then try to make our lives difficult by saying how I was not allowed to cook for Thomas and would send food boxes whenever Thomas came to visit us. That poor child would heat those boxes for every meal, and it broke my heart. So after a few times, I started to cook hot meals for him so we could all have dinners together, and we would just make sure to not mention it in front of Jesse. It was nuts that we had to lie about food, and I just didn't understand why Jesse would do all this. 3 months ago, me and Brad got engaged. It was the most beautiful surprise, and I knew that he was the man for me. When we called to inform our parents, Brad's parents insisted that they were going to throw a get-together for us. I invited some of my coworkers as well as my childhood friends. Everyone already knew this was our engagement party, so I thought Jessie would not be coming. Unfortunately, she did show up, and I braced myself for the evening. As expected, she would tell my coworkers and friends about how she was the first woman for Brad, even though everybody already knew about her. It was embarrassing that she was trying to steal our spotlight when it was in fact our engagement. I decided to ignore her and overall had a good time at the party. As the wedding was approaching, my mother and Brad's mother were in full-on planning mode. We were all working tirelessly to ensure every aspect of the celebration reflected the love and joy we felt. From choosing the perfect venue to selecting the color scheme and floral arrangements, our days were filled with discussions and decisions. Just a week before our wedding, there was an unexpected knock on the door. I was working from home that day while Brad was away on a business trip. Thinking it might be my mother, I opened the door to see Jessie standing outside. This was quite unexpected, so I asked her if everything was okay and if Thomas was okay. She looked at me expressionless and told me that she needed to talk to me. I nodded and let her come in. Seated in our living room, Jessie straight up told me that I needed to call off the engagement with Brad. I was taken aback hearing this and asked her what she was even talking about. This is when Jessie started telling me how she knew about my dirty secret from my past. I scoffed at her and asked her what she meant, and to get to the point, as I had no time to play her little games. Jessie told me that she had found out from one of my childhood friends who she had met during our engagement party that I had a miscarriage at the age of 21. I froze hearing this, since this was quite private information. It was true that I got pregnant at 21 accidentally, and I eventually went on to have a miscarriage, which was traumatic to live through. I was young and I did not even know I was pregnant in the first place, so it really hurt to lose the fetus. I had grappled with the grief of losing a life I hadn't fully comprehended. My close friends and family knew about this, and they all helped me navigate this difficult time. I had already told Brad about this as well when we started dating, so I did not mind Jessie revealing this to him, as it wouldn't be a surprise to him at all, but it did bother me that she was using such vulnerable and painful information from my past to try to manipulate me. I firmly told her that she had no right to talk about my past and threaten me, since all my loved ones already knew about this. Jessie didn't expect this and started screaming how I was a bad human being for killing a child, and that she was going to make sure that everybody knew how awful I was. The argument kept escalating and she eventually stormed off, leaving me quite shaken and disturbed. When Brad returned home the next day, I recounted the bizarre encounter to him, and he decided to confront her. In a phone call, he told her off for trying to come in between us and acknowledged that he already knew about my past. He defended me, saying how I was too young at that time to even understand what I was going through, and that she should not have ever used that information on me. In his anger, he uninvited Jessie from our upcoming wedding. She started screaming at him that if she was uninvited, then she would not be allowing Thomas to attend our wedding either. They went back and forth but didn't reach any agreement. I knew that Jessie would not accept defeat easily, but Brad assured me that he would not allow Jessie to come between us anymore and would take a stand against her publicly if need be. When our wedding day finally arrived, the air was filled with excitement and happiness. I was so excited to marry the love of my life and couldn't wait to take my vows. After I walked down the aisle with my dad, the ceremony was underway when Jessie, with her son Thomas in tow, barged into the venue, wearing a floor-length off-white dress. Everyone turns to look at the unexpected intrusion when Jessie immediately says, "Stop the wedding." Color drained from my face as I turned to look at Brad, who was red in anger and embarrassment. Jessie then loudly demands that I should not marry Brad, otherwise she is going to reveal my secret to everyone right then and there. My eyes widen in shock as everyone looks around confused. Thomas kept looking at his father helplessly, clearly not wanting to be a part of this fiasco. She then walked towards us while shouting how terrible I was to marry Brad when I never deserved to be with someone like him. Before I could speak, Brad stood in front of me and Jessie and ordered her to leave peacefully before he called the police on her. Jessie's eyes widened in shock seeing him unexpectedly stand up to her. She screams at him about how he could ever even think about marrying a woman like me. I was already in tears by this point, and our happiest day was slowly turning into the worst day ever. Fortunately, 2 of Brad's cousins who were my bridesmaids sprang into action. With a quiet yet assertive demeanor, they escorted her out of the venue, warning her that if she didn't leave then the police would be called and this would affect her life. Jessie eventually retreated, still hurling accusations and insults, while Brad insisted that Thomas should stay for our wedding. The atmosphere remained tense, but Brad's parents and my parents came to hug us, seeing my tear-stricken face. Even Brad's parents, who had maintained a supportive relationship with Jessie, were shocked by her behavior. The priest asked if we should continue the ceremony and Brad nodded while embracing me in his arms. We were determined to salvage what remained of our once joyous day, so despite what happened, we decided to have a good time. Now after our wedding, we went on our honeymoon, so we did not check on our phones, but now that we are back, we have received multiple messages from Jesse's sister, and some relatives from Brad's side of the family who all believe that we were too harsh on his ex-wife. Jesse has also sent several nasty messages to me which I didn't even bother reading completely. So Reddit, were we the a-holes for kicking Jesse out of the wedding? Update 1. Thank you everyone for your comments and continued support since I posted this a week ago. It's pretty clear that a majority of you agree that we did the right thing by kicking her and that we should have involved the police sooner because of Jesse's toxic behavior. It's true that I could have involved the police sooner, but the thing that stops us is when we think of Thomas. We don't want to make his life difficult, so Brad and I have always tried to choose the peaceful way out, but it seems like Jesse doesn't respect our boundaries. Also, I did talk to my childhood friends to find out who it was that gave Jesse such private information about me in the first place. Turns out, one of my friends was too drunk that night during the party, and being a blabbermouth revealed this secret to Jesse, who kept on asking my friend repeatedly about my past. This particular friend has since apologized when I confronted her about it, but our friendship unfortunately will never remain the same again. I understand that she was drunk and made a mistake, but Jesse used this to try to ruin my wedding. What really hurts me is that not only is she using my past against me, but she also involved Thomas in the middle of this. Brad also understands this and is currently in talks with his lawyer to see how he can navigate this co-parenting relationship with Jesse without her trying to make it more and more difficult for us. I will update you in a few days. Update 2. Hi guys. I know it's been 2 weeks since my last update, but nothing significant has happened until now for me to post an update regarding this incident. Yesterday, Brad's parents invited me, Brad, and Jesse to have a formal discussion regarding Thomas. They had not talked with Jesse since the wedding incident and had refused to pick up her calls, which was unexpected for Jesse. When we all sat down to discuss, they made it very clear to Jesse that they respected her as she was the mother of their grandkid and was married to Brad, but that they would go to any length to protect me since I was now married to him and they loved me like a daughter. They firmly told her that they would not stand for her to disrespect me in any way as she did by barging into our wedding, and that if she continued to behave disgracefully, then they were ready to fight with her in court. Jesse clearly had never expected this reaction since Brad's parents had always been nice to her. I took this opportunity to come clean to Brad's parents about my miscarriage before Jesse would have a chance to manipulate them. To my surprise, Brad's parents didn't judge me at all and they understood how painful it must have been for me. Brad's mother, Martha, turned to Jesse and asked her if this was the so-called secret that she had been wanting to reveal in front of everyone. Jesse nodded and said how she could never trust me around Thomas when I was such a bad person. Martha asked her what she meant by that, and Jesse went into a tirade about how I must have knowingly had the miscarriage and how I was never going to be a good mother, so she wanted to protect Brad from a gold digger like me. Brad's parents' expression shifted from confusion to disappointment. Martha told her that she had no right to say something like that about me when the miscarriage had happened unexpectedly and I was too young to go through something like that. Brad's parents, who had remained neutral for a long time, now understood the gravity of the situation and expressed their regret to me for not intervening and protecting me sooner from all this. Brad defended me as well and told Jesse that she had no idea what she was talking about and she should stop interfering in our marriage. He took this opportunity to set clear boundaries during the discussion. He declared that Jesse was no longer welcome at their home until she apologized for her disruptive behavior, and he made it clear that any further attempts to harass or threaten us would be met with legal action. Jesse started saying how he could not just do this to her when she was the mother of his child, but Brad stood his ground, saying that she was under no circumstances to contact me ever again nor come to our place when he was not around. He assured her that he had gathered evidence and consulted with lawyers, ready to take legal measures if she persisted in her disruptive and toxic behavior. Seeing a united front and the threat of taking this up legally, Jesse reluctantly agreed. Honestly, I am kind of glad that we confronted her, even if it meant facing uncomfortable truths. I am glad that my in-laws stood up for me and supported me against Jesse, since I had been going through this alone for a long time. I don't know if Jesse will ever change, but I am just glad that I won't have to see her again, and that is enough for me now. Update 3. It's been 6 months since I last updated. Brad and I are doing well and my relationship with Thomas has improved considerably over the last months. I know a lot of you expected Jesse to continue to torment us, but surprisingly, after facing legal threats, she has not interfered in my life and only talks to Brad regarding their co-parenting duties whenever necessary. She does still have issues if I cook for Thomas or do his laundry, but overall she has stayed out of my ways. Thomas, sensing the newfound stability, has begun to adapt more positively to the harmonious co-parenting environment. We have continued to celebrate important milestones in his life together, ensuring that he feels the love and support of everyone. We recently took Thomas for a vacation up in the mountains and I taught Thomas to ski. He is a bright child and a quick learner, so he learned it in no time. He is as adventurous as me, so this upcoming summer, we have planned to learn to surf together. I don't know how long this peaceful phase will last, but I hope that Jesse continues to respect the boundaries we've set, allowing Thomas to thrive in an environment free from unnecessary conflict.